Hi students, this is Mr. Werman. I am the math interventionist, and I'm making a little short video on comparing fractions. We're really looking at comparing fractions using common denominators mostly. The three things we're really going to cover here is the different signs we'll use to compare fractions. We'll look at comparing fractions with the same denominator, and then we'll look at finding a common denominator to compare fractions and how to do that. Okay, so first of all, signs. So we have, for example, something we might be familiar with. We'd say something like, let's keep it simple, something like 1/4 and 3/4. If we looked at those two numbers and you were asked to compare those two numbers, you would say 1/4 should be less than 3/4, right? So we'll use the less than sign, right? If you can remember which way that goes, right? Two ways to think about it. Some people will say the crocodile, if it's like a crocodile, eats the larger number, okay? So that should be, the crocodile mouth should be going towards the larger number. Or if you think of it like, if you have your two numbers that you're comparing, 2 dots by the larger number, 1 dot by the smaller number, and then you combine them like that. So anyways, this is our less than sign, okay? If we were to sort of flip that around and I were to say compare 3/4 and 1/4, okay? We would say that would be greater than, right? So now the sign is the opposite way, okay? So those are the two main ones we're looking at first. We'll eventually start adding in, we might look at some things that might be like 1/4 and let's say 2/8. And if you simplified 2/8, you know that is actually equivalent to 1/4. So we could actually say they're equal. Okay, so you might see that for some fractions as well. Later on, as we move on, we might say something like something could be less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. Okay, but that's going to come up a little bit later on. Okay, so the main signs that we're looking at: less than, greater than. Just be familiar which way they go. Use a little thing in your brain, like the crocodile idea, to help remember which direction they go. Okay, those are our signs. So number 2, let's compare fractions with the same denominator. So I kind of did a couple examples here. If we say something is 1/4 and 3/4, right? So the idea of comparing with the same denominator is pretty simple. If you have something that is cut into 4 parts, so it's cut into 4 parts, this is one of those parts, this is 3 of those parts. So if we're to look at it with a visual, right? Something cut into 4, something cut into 4, and 1 part versus 3 parts, we see obviously the 1 part is smaller, 1/4 is smaller, 3/4 is bigger. Okay, so when you have the same parts, you get that same denominator. It makes comparing it really easy, because really then you're just looking at your numerators and saying which numerator is bigger or smaller. That way. Okay, so another quick example. If we could just say something like 7/12 and 11/12. Let's say 11/12, 7/12, right? Something that is the same number of parts, 12 parts, right? And then 11 of those 12 parts, 7 of those 12 parts. Really clear which one's bigger, so we put that greater than. Okay, so that's just simply comparing fractions with the same denominator. So now what we're trying to do, as we have different denominators, we're going to try to have them use the same denominator to make comparing it much easier. Okay, so now this is where we get to a few different steps. So let's take an example like, let's say 3/5 and 7/10. Okay, so now this one might not be quite as clear just looking at it, which one is larger and which one is smaller. They're actually fairly close. Okay? But if we were to compare them, figure out if the equal sign, greater than, less than sign between them, we want to find that common denominator. Well, how do you find the common denominator of two fractions? Well, the easiest thing to do is to find our multiples. So find the multiples of each of our denominators. And when you find something common, then you find your common denominator and we'll get there. Okay, so let's first just list some common multiples here of 5. Okay, so 5 times 1 is of course 5. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 3, 20. 5 5 times 4, sorry, 5 times 3, 15, jumping ahead. 5 times 4, 20. Okay. So we've got a few multiples there of 5. 10, obvious. 10 times 1, 10. 10 times 2, 20. Of course, I can keep going, but we see that common multiple right there. Right? 10 is that common multiple. Okay. So now that we know what the common multiple is, we know how to get there for this one. We multiply by 2. This one, obviously, we're just multiplying by 1. It's staying the same. We're going to multiply that to get there. So to turn our 3/5 into something out of 10, we know we got to multiply by 2's. So we're going to multiply our numerator and our denominator by 2. That's the only important part here, the most important part here. If you forget to do 1, you're changing the value of the fraction. So you definitely want to multiply both your numerator and denominator by that 2. So we end up with 6 over 10 and 7 over 10. And if it wasn't clear before, it is certainly clear now. We have 10 parts, 6 of those 10 versus 7 of those 10. We know that 6 over 10 is less. So I'll put that less than sign between those two. Okay. Okay, let's look at a couple more examples, maybe make them slightly tougher. Okay, so let's say two numbers like 4/5 and 2/3. Okay, once again, maybe you can tell, maybe not, which fraction's larger. So one way to do it is to get that common denominator. So first, let's list our multiples of each of these denominators. So 5, I already had some listed there, but I'll do it again. 5 times 1 is 5, times 2 is 10, times 3, 15, times 4, 20, etc. Times 5, 25. Okay, right? 3. 3 times 1, 3, times 2, 6, times 3, 9, times 4, 12, times 5 is 15. Okay, and of course, right now we see that common denominator. Okay, we see 15 is the common denominator here and here. So in fact, that is our least common denominator. So that's what we're going to change it into. Okay, so in order to get our denominator of this to be 15, we see we're going to have to multiply by 3. So we'll multiply our denominator by 3, but also our numerator. Okay, because really we're just multiplying by 3 over 3, 3 over 3, or 3 divided by 3 is 1. So we're not changing the value of 4/5. We're just making it an unsimplified version of 4/5. Right? So 4 times 3 is 12. 5 times 3 is 15, as we said. We get 12/15. Okay. Our 2/3, we see you have to multiply by 5. So we multiply by 5. Okay. Again, multiply numerator and denominator because we're really just multiplying by 1. 5 over 5 is 1. So 2 times 5 is 10. 3 times 5 is 15. All right, so now it's very clear. We have 10/15 and 12/15. So we see that clearly 12/15 is larger. So we can put the greater than sign facing that 12/15. Or if we're just comparing our original numbers, 4/5 is greater than 2/3. Okay, making sense? Let's try one more to be sure. So let's compare 3/4 and 7 over 9. 7/9. Okay. Again, we're trying to find that common denominator. So first step, we'll list the multiples. Okay. 4 times 1, 4. Times 2 is 8. Times 3 is 12. Times 4, 16. Times 5, 20. Times 6, we're going to keep going, is 24. Times 7, 28. Times 8, 32. Times 9, 36. Okay. And if we did times 10, it'd be 40. Okay. Great. 9. We'll say 9 times 1 is 9. Times 2 would give us 18. Times 3 is our 27. Times 4 is 36. Times 5, 45. And at this point, we see we do have a match here. Okay. So we see that 36 is a common denominator of both 4 and 9. So that actually is our least common multiple. Okay. So we don't see any less than that. So there it is, 36. So to get there, 3/4, we're going to multiply it by 9 over 9 to get something out of 36. So we multiply by 9, we multiply by 9, and we get 27 over 36. We multiply this one by 4, and we get 28 over 36. Okay, so there we have it. Very close numbers. When you get them really in those larger fractions, you see how close they are, 1/36 apart. But when we see 27 over 36 versus 28 over 36, we know that 27 over 36 is smaller, so we'll put that less than sign. Or if we go back to our original number, 3/4 is less than 7/9. Okay. Hope that made sense. We'll get into other forms of comparing fractions, other methods to do that. Right now, I think I'm familiar with this, and these least common multiples will help you quite a bit to understand those. If you have questions, still need help, you can always email me.